February 1944, northern Italy, Monte Cassino. A German sniper with 14 confirmed Allied kills sits motionless behind a stone wall 300 yards uphill, scanning the rubble below through factory-grade ice optics. He has not moved in 4 hours. His breath is controlled. His rifle, a Carabiner 98K top with a ZF-39 scope, is zeroed to perfection. He watches a narrow alley between 2 shattered buildings where 3 American soldiers died yesterday trying to cross. He knows someone will try again. They always do. Meanwhile, 600 yards farther down the mountain, crouched inside the skeleton of a bombed-out farmhouse, Private First Class Daniel Rourke of the 34th Infantry Division sits with his back against Coldstone, cradling a Springfield M1903A4 sniper rifle. The scope mounted on top is not military issue. It is a Unertl 8X target scope, ordered by mail from a Pennsylvania sporting goods catalog 9 months earlier, and carried across an ocean in his duffel bag. His platoon sergeant told him it was unauthorized. His company commander said using it in combat could get him court-martialed. The battalion's official sniper told him he was asking to die because the scope's tube was too long, too fragile, too visible, and would give away his position the moment sunlight kissed the glass. Rourke said nothing. He just cleaned the lenses every night and waited. Today, waiting would save 37 men. If you believe stories like this shouldn't vanish with time, subscribe. Let's keep their memory alive together. The morning begins in silence. No artillery, no aircraft, just wind scraping across shattered stone and the faint metallic clicks of men checking rifles they have already checked twice. Monte Cassino is a graveyard pretending to be a battlefield. Every ridge, every wall, every pile of rubble hides either a body or someone waiting to make another. The German defenders hold the high ground. They have held it for weeks. The Allies have thrown division after division at the mountain, and the mountain has swallowed them. Rourke's unit, part of the second wave assault on the Abbey complex, has been pinned in the lower ruins for 3 days. They cannot advance. They cannot retreat. They can only wait for someone to solve the problem that keeps killing them. That problem is the sniper uphill. No one has seen him. No one knows exactly where he shoots from. But 7 men are dead because of him. And every time an officer tries to organize a push forward, someone's head comes apart in a pink mist and the push dies with him. Fear is now doctrine. No one moves during daylight. No one even stands. The sniper has become a ghost with a rifle, and ghosts cannot be fought with tactics written in a manual. Rourke is 23 years old. He grew up in rural Montana, 10 miles outside a town too small to have a traffic light. His father was a cattle rancher who taught him to shoot prairie dogs at 200 yards before he turned 12. By 16, Rourke was winning county shooting competitions with a rifle older than his grandfather. He learned patience the way some men learn anger, slowly, inevitably, until it became part of his skeleton. Hunting mule deer in the Bitterroot Mountains taught him that movement kills and stillness saves, that the animal who waits longest eats, that the shot is not the hard part. The hard part is earning the shot. When he enlisted in 1942, the recruiter saw his rifle scores and tried to make him an instructor. He refused. He did not want to teach. He wanted to go where the shooting mattered. They sent him to North Africa first, then Sicily, then up the Italian boot where the mud was frozen and the enemy dug in like ticks. Somewhere along the way, he realized the M1903A4 standard issue scope, a Weaver 330C, was built for adequacy, not precision. It was functional. It was reliable. It was also optically inferior to the scopes he used as a teenager in Montana. So he rode home. He asked his brother to go to the sporting goods store in Billings and buy the best long-range target scope they had. His brother sent the Unertl 8X. It arrived in a wooden crate stuffed with newspaper. Rourke mounted it himself using a screwdriver and a field manual he barely trusted. The first time he fired it, the reticle stayed true. The second time, he put a round through a bottle cap at 400 yards. He knew then that he would never go back to the Weaver, but unofficial gear draws official attention. His sergeant saw the scope and asked where it came from. Rourke told the truth. The sergeant told him to take it off. Rourke asked why. The sergeant said because it is not approved, because it has not been tested under combat conditions. because if it fails and you die, the Army will call it your fault. Rourke said he trusted it more than the issued scope. The sergeant said trust does not matter, and that using non-standard equipment in a combat zone without authorization is a violation of uniform code. Rourke did not argue. He also did not remove the scope. He simply stopped talking about it. When a battalion sniper, a corporal named Huxley who had gone through official sniper school at Camp Perry, saw the unearthed during a supply check, he laughed. He said it was a beautiful piece of glass, but suicide to use in the field. He said the tube was twice as long as a standard scope and would catch light like a signal mirror. He said German counter-snipers were trained to watch for glint, and that using a scope that reflected was the same as painting a bullseye on your forehead. He said Rourke was asking to die. Rourke asked if Huxley had ever used one. Huxley said no. Rourke said, then you do not know what you're talking about. Huxley walked away, shaking his head. 2 days later, Huxley was shot to the neck while repositioning near the Abbey's outer wall. He died before the medic reached him. Rourke carried his rifle back to camp and said nothing. Now it is February 14th, and the sniper uphill has the entire platoon trapped. The company commander, Lieutenant Mercer, calls Rourke into the farmhouse cellar that serves as the command post. Mercer is 31, a schoolteacher from Ohio before the war, and he looks like he has aged a decade in 3 days. He tells Rourke they need the sniper dead. Rourke says he knows. Mercer says he is not asking, he is ordering. Rourke says he understands. Mercer looks at the unearthed scope on Rourke's rifle and asks if that thing actually works. Rourke says it works better than anything the Army ever gave him. Mercer says if you get yourself killed because of it, I will have to write your mother a letter explaining that you died using unauthorized equipment. Rourke says then do not mention the scope in the letter. Mercer almost smiles. He tells Rourke to take whatever time he needs, but that the platoon cannot move until the German is dead. Rourke nods. He slings his rifle, fills 2 canteens, stuffs his pockets with hardtack and ammunition, and walks out into the cold without another word. The first rule of counter-sniping is do not hunt where your enemy expects you. The German sniper has been operating from somewhere in the upper ruins for 72 hours. Every American attempt to locate him has ended in death. That means he has perfect concealment, perfect observation, and perfect patience. He is not an amateur. He is not reckless. He is a professional killer who knows the value of invisibility. Rourke knows that trying to outshoot him from a predictable position is suicide, so he does not try. Instead, he spends the first 3 hours moving laterally along the mountainside, crawling through rubble and frozen mud, circling wide around the expected line of advance. He moves 5 yards, then stops for 10 minutes. Moves another 5 yards, stops again. His hands go numb. His knees bleed through his trousers. He does not care. Patience is the only weapon that matters now. By noon, he has repositioned nearly 400 yards to the east of his platoon's location, into a collapsed section of an old monastery outbuilding that no one has occupied since the shelling began. The stones are black with soot. The roof is gone, but the walls still stand, and from a gap between 2 fallen pillars, Rourke has a clean line of sight across the valley toward the ridgeline, where the German sniper is hidden. He settles in. He does not set up his rifle yet. First, he watches. He watches the way the light moves across the ruins. He watches the shadows lengthen and shift. He watches for movement, for anything that does not belong to wind or the birds. He sees nothing that is expected. The German is not stupid enough to move during daylight. But Rourke is not hunting movement. He is hunting stillness. He is hunting the one shadow that does not change when the sun moves. He is hunting the absence of randomness. And after 2 hours of watching, he sees it, a dark vertical line behind a shattered stone wall, 320 yards uphill and slightly north. It does not move. It does not sway. It is too straight to be natural. Rourke marks the location in his mind, then shifts his gaze away. He does not stare. Staring creates patterns, and patterns draw attention. Instead, he glances back every few minutes, checking to see if the line is still there. It is. Always in the same place. Always the same shape. That is the rifle. That is the German. Rourke slowly, inch by inch, brings his Springfield into position. He nestles the stock into his shoulder. He adjusts his breathing. He looks through the unearthed scope, and the world compresses into clarity. The 8x magnification pulls the ridgeline close enough that he can see the texture of the stones, the frost on the dead grass, the faint outline of a helmet behind the wall. The German is there, motionless, professional, waiting for someone to make a mistake. Rourke does not give him one. He does not fire. Not yet. Firing now would only reveal his position, without guaranteeing a kill. The German is behind cover. Rourke can see part of his helmet and the top of his rifle, but not his body. A shot to the helmet might miss, might ricochet, might wound but not kill. And a wounded sniper is more dangerous than a healthy one, because he knows someone is hunting him. Rourke needs a clean kill. That means he needs a German to move. So he waits. Minutes become an hour. An hour becomes 2. The sun slides lower. Shadows stretch across the valley like fingers. Rourke's legs cramp. His shoulders ache. He does not move. He breathes through his nose, slow and shallow, watching the reticle stay fixed on the stone wall. He knows the German is doing the same thing, watching his own sector with the same lethal patience. 2 men, separated by 300 yards in a war, both waiting for the other to blink. But Rourke has one advantage the German does not know about. The unearthed scope's optics are clearer, sharper, and more forgiving in low light than the Zeiss glass the German is using. As the afternoon fades and the light turns gold, Rourke can still see details that are softening into shadow for his enemy. That clarity buys him seconds. And in sniper work, seconds are everything. At 1600 hours, the German shifts. It is not a large movement, just a slight adjustment of his rifle, a repositioning of his weight, maybe a cramp in his leg, or a need to stretch his neck. But it is enough. For 3 seconds, the top of his torso rises above the wall, visible in profile. Rourke sees the shape of his coat, the line of his shoulder, the angle of his jaw beneath the helmet. He does not think. Thinking takes time. He exhales halfway, lets his heartbeat settle between breaths, and squeezes a trigger. The Springfield kicks. The report cracks across the valley, like a frozen branch snapping. Through the scope, Rourke sees the German's helmet snap backward. The man's body crumples out of sight behind the wall. There is no scream, no movement, just the empty space where a killer used to be. Rourke does not celebrate. He chambers another round and keeps the scope fixed on the wall, waiting to see if the German will move again, waiting to see if there's a second sniper, waiting because assuming you have one is how you die. 5 minutes pass. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still nothing. After 15 minutes, Rourke slowly lowers the rifle and exhales for the first time since pulling the trigger. His hands are shaking, not from fear, from the adrenaline finally breaking through the stillness. He sits back against the stone, closes his eyes for 10 seconds, then begins a long crawl back to friendly lines. When he reaches the farmhouse just after dusk, Lieutenant Mercer is waiting. He asks if it is done. Rourke says yes. Mercer asks if he is sure. Rourke says the German is not moving and will not move again. Mercer asks how far the shot was. Rourke says a little over 300 yards. Mercer looks at the unearthed scope and says nothing for a long moment. Then he says, "I do not care where that scope came from. You just saved this entire platoon." Rourke shrugs. He says he just did what needed doing. Mercer says most men would not have had the patience. Rourke says patience is free. Bullets are not. Mercer almost laughs. The next morning, the platoon advances. For the first time in 4 days, they move uphill without losing a man. They reach the ridgeline by midday and find the German sniper's body exactly where Rourke said it would be. He is a Gefreiter, roughly equivalent to an American corporal, with a weathered face and hands that look older than his years. His Carabiner 98K is still propped against the wall. The Zeiss scope is undamaged. In his coat pocket, they find a small notebook with pencil sketches of the valley, marked with ranges and wind notes. 14 tally marks are scratched into the rifle stock. Someone suggests taking the rifle as a trophy. Mercer says no. He says leave it. He says the man was a soldier, same as them, and soldiers do not loot the dead. They bury him in a shallow grave with no marker and move on. Rourke's kill is logged in the company record as a standard engagement. No mention is made of the unearthed scope. No commendation is issued. No official report goes up the chain. That is fine with Rourke. He did not do it for recognition. He did it because his friends were dying and he had the tools to stop it. The scope, unauthorized and unapproved, gave him the edge he needed. The clarity, the confidence, the ability to see what others could not. In the weeks that follow, word spreads quietly among the snipers in the division. They hear about the Montana kid with the mail-order scope who outweighted a German expert and made a kill at 300 yards in fading light. Some of them ask to see the unearthly. Rourke lets them look. A few ask where they can get one. Rourke tells them. Within 2 months, 3 other snipers in the 34th Infantry Division are using civilian target scopes ordered from the States. The Army never officially approves it. They also never officially stop it. The results speak too loudly to ignore. Rourke survives Monte Cassino. He survives the Gothic Line. He survives the final push into northern Italy in the spring of 1945. He is never wounded. He is never captured. He is credited with 9 confirmed kills, though the real number is certainly higher because most sniper work goes unwitnessed and unrecorded. When the war ends, he ships home with his rifle and his scope, both battered and scarred but still functional. He goes back to Montana. He works on his father's ranch. He marries a woman from the next county over. He has 3 children. He never talks about the war unless someone asks directly, and even then, he keeps it short. When veterans groups invite him to speak, he declines. He does not think what he did was special. He thinks he was just a man with a rifle who did not panic and did not quit. But the men who served with him remember. They remember the German sniper who had them pinned and terrified. They remember the quiet kid from Montana who walked out alone with a scope the Army said would get him killed. They remember how he came back hours later and said it was done, and how it was. They remember advancing the next day without hearing the crack of a rifle from a ridge. They remember being alive because someone else had the patience to wait longer than death. The unearthly scope stayed with Rourke until he died in 1998 at the age of 77. His son inherited it. It still sits in a gun safe in Montana. The bluing worn thin. The leather lens covers cracked. The reticle still sharp. No museum asked for it. No historian wrote about it. It is just a piece of glass and steel that once turned the tide of a small, forgotten battle in a war full of bigger, louder stories. But for 37 men pinned in the ruins of Monte Cassino in February 1944, it was the difference between dying in the mud and going home. Rourke never called himself a hero. He would have hated the word. But heroism is not always loud. Sometimes it is a man lying motionless in frozen rubble for 6 hours, trusting a scope the Army said was suicide, waiting for a 3-second window to do what no one else could. Sometimes it is choosing patience over panic, precision over rage, stillness over movement. Sometimes it is ordering a piece of glass from a catalog and carrying across an ocean because you know deep in your bones that the tools they give you are not good enough, and that good enough is just another way of saying acceptable losses. Rourke did not accept losses. He accepted responsibility, and that made all the difference. The German sniper was not a monster. He was not evil. He was a man doing his job with skill and discipline, the same as Rourke. War makes enemies of people who might have been friends in another life. It puts rifles in their hands and tells them the other side is the problem. But skill respects skill, even across a battlefield. The German waited. Rourke waited longer. The German trusted his training. Rourke trusted his instincts. In the end, the difference was not courage or cruelty. It was clarity, the ability to see one moment more clearly than the enemy. The unearthly scope gave Rourke that clarity. And clarity, in war, is the rarest and most valuable currency of all. There is no monument to Daniel Rourke. No medal with his name engraved in brass. No chapter in the official history of Monte Cassino. His story exists only in the fading memories of old men and the logbooks of a unit that no longer exists. But the lesson he left behind is still relevant. That sometimes the tools you need are not the tools you are given. That sometimes doing the right thing means breaking the rules written by people who were never in your position. That patience is not passive. It is aggressive stillness. It is choosing to wait when every nerve in your body screams to move. And that the difference between life and death is often not firepower or numbers, but a willingness to trust yourself when everyone else says you are wrong. The men who walked up that ridgeline the day after Rourke killed the German sniper did not know his name. Most of them never met him, but they owed him their lives. And in a war where millions died for reasons they did not choose and goals they did not understand, being alive because one man refused to quit is maybe the only victory that matters. Rourke gave them that, not with a speech or a charge or a sacrifice that made the headlines. He gave it to them with a mail-order scope, a steady hand, and the quiet, unshakable belief that if you wait long enough, you will see what others miss. And when you see it, you do not hesitate. You do not doubt. You exhale, squeeze, and let the bullet do what patience earned. They said he was asking to die. They said the scope was too long, too bright, too fragile. They said unauthorized gear would get him killed. They were wrong. The scope did not kill him. It saved him. And it saved everyone who walked behind him into the ruins of a mountain that ate armies. That is not luck. That is not chance. That is a man who knew what he needed, went and got it, and used it better than anyone thought possible. That is a kind of story that should not vanish with time. That is the kind of man we should remember. The decision to use the unertl was not impulsive. Rourke spent weeks testing it in North Africa, before Monte Cassino. He fired at dawn, at noon, at dusk. He tested it in sandstorms and rain. He zeroed it a dozen times to ensure the mounting system would not shift under recoil. He wrapped the forward lens in a thin layer of cheesecloth to reduce glare, a trick he learned from hunting antelope in Montana, where a flash of reflected sun could spook game at 500 yards. He practiced dry firing for hours, building muscle memory, learning exactly how much pressure the trigger required, where the reticle settled after each shot. He did not trust the scope because it was expensive. He trusted it because he tested it until failure was impossible. That is the difference between gambling and preparation. Rourke never gambled. He prepared, then executed. The night before the hunt at Monte Cassino, Rourke lay in his sleeping roll and thought about the German. He did not hate him. He did not even know him, but he understood him. The German was probably a farm boy or a factory worker before the war, same as half the men in his own platoon. He probably had a girl back home and a mother who prayed for him. He probably hated the cold and the mud and the waiting as much as anyone. But he was good at his job, and his job was killing Americans. That made him a problem. Not a villain, just a problem that needed solving. Rourke did not take it personally. He took it professionally. And professionalism in war means doing what needs to be done without the luxury of emotion. Emotion makes you hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed. Rourke did not hesitate. The morning of the 14th was colder than usual. Frost clung to the shattered stones like a second skin. Rourke ate a tin of cold beans and drank water that tasted like metal. He checked his rifle, wiped down the scope lenses, loaded 5 rounds into magazine and chambered 1. He did not bring extra ammunition. If he needed more than 6 rounds, he was already dead. He told no one where he was going. He did not want advice. He did not want company. He wanted silence and time, and both were easier to find alone. He left the farmhouse before the sun cleared the ridge and moved through the ruins like a shadow, low and slow, placing each foot deliberately to avoid crunching gravel or shifting loose stones. Every sound was a signal. Every movement was a risk. He moved as if the entire mountain was watching, because it was. By the time he reached his position in the collapsed outbuilding, the sun was high and pale behind thin clouds. The light was flat, no hard shadows, no dramatic contrasts, just gray stone and gray sky, and the cold weight of a rifle in his hands. He settled into the gap between the pillars and began the process of disappearing. He covered his helmet with a scrap of torn burlap. He smeared mud on his face and hands to break up the outline of his skin. He arranged loose stones around his position to create the illusion of natural rubble. He did not look like a man. He looked like part of the ruin. That was the point. Camouflage is not about blending in. It is about becoming invisible by erasing the things that make you recognizable. Shape, shine, shadow, silhouette. Rourke erased them all. The first hour was the hardest. His body wanted to move. His legs wanted to shift. His back wanted to stretch. He ignored all of it. He focused on his breathing, on the rhythm of inhale and exhale, on the way the cold air burned his lungs and the way his breath misted in front of his face. He watched the ridgeline through the scope, scanning slowly from left to right, looking for anything that did not belong. He saw nothing. That was expected. The German was hidden too well. But Rourke was not discouraged. He was not looking for the man. He was looking for the mistake. Everyone makes mistakes, even professionals. You just have to be patient enough to see them. The second hour was easier. His body had accepted the stillness. His mind had settled into the task. He stopped thinking about his discomfort and started thinking like a hunter. He studied the terrain. He noted the angle of the sun and the direction of the wind. He identified potential firing positions based on sight lines and cover. There were 3 likely spots where the German could be operating. One was too exposed. One had poor visibility to the lower ruins. The third, a section of collapsed wall with a narrow gap facing downslope, was perfect. Rourke marked it in his mind and shifted his scope slightly to the right. And there it was, the vertical line, too straight, too dark, too still, the rifle barrel. He had found the German. Now came the waiting. Rourke knew the German would not expose himself unless necessary. Snipers do not move without reason. They do not adjust unless forced to. They wait for targets to appear, take the shot, and disappear. Rourke needed to give the German a reason to move, but he could not use bait. Sending a man into the open to draw fire was murder. So he waited for the German to make his own mistake, to shift his weight, to stretch a cramped muscle, to wipe condensation from his scope. Something small, something human. Rourke had time. The platoon was not moving until the German was dead. Hours did not matter. Only the result mattered. The third hour passed in silence. The fourth was the same. Rourke's legs had gone numb. His fingers were stiff inside his gloves. His lips were cracked and dry. He did not care. He was beyond discomfort. He was inside the task, merged with it, part of the stone and the cold and the waiting. The scope showed him the world in perfect clarity. Every crack in the wall, every blade of dead grass, every shadow that might hide a man. The Unauthorized optics were so clear he could see the texture of the German's coat. When the wind pressed it against the stone, he could see the frost on the man's helmet. He could see the faint outline of his shoulder behind the wall. But he could not see enough to guarantee a kill. Not yet. The German moved at 4 in the afternoon. It was not much, just a slight repositioning. A shift of weight from one leg to the other. A brief rise of his torso above the cover of the wall. 3 seconds. Maybe less. But it was enough. Rourke saw the shape of the man's upper body, the line of his shoulder, the angle of his neck. He did not think. He exhaled, let his heart settle between beats, and squeezed the trigger. The Springfield roared. The recoil drove into his shoulder. Through the scope, he saw the German's head snap back, saw the helmet tumble away, saw the body drop out of sight. And then there was nothing, just the empty ridgeline and the echo of the shot rolling across the valley. Rourke did not move. He stayed in position, scope trained on the wall, waiting for a second sniper, waiting for return fire, waiting for anything that would tell him the fight was not over. 5 minutes, 10, 15, nothing. The ridgeline was silent. The German was dead. Rourke lowered the rifle, let out a long breath, and felt the cold flood back into his body. His legs barely worked when he tried to stand. His hands shook when he slung the rifle over his shoulder. He crawled out of the outbuilding and began the long, slow journey back to friendly lines, moving to the same rubble he had crossed that morning, but now without the weight of the hunt pressing on his chest. When he returned to the farmhouse, the sun was setting. The sky was red and orange, the kind of sunset that looks beautiful until you remember where you are and what you have done. Lieutenant Mercer was waiting by the cellar entrance, smoking a cigarette. He looked up when Rourke approached and asked if it was finished. Rourke nodded. Mercer asked how he knew. Rourke said because the man is dead. Mercer asked if he saw the body. Rourke said he saw the shot. Mercer said that is good enough for me. He offered Rourke a cigarette. Rourke did not smoke, but he took it anyway. They stood together in the cold, watching the light die on the mountain, and said nothing. There was nothing to say. The job was done. That was all that mattered. The next morning, when the platoon advanced and found the German's body, Mercer pulled Rourke aside and told him the men wanted to know who made the shot. Rourke said it does not matter. Mercer said it matters to them. Rourke said then tell them it was a lucky shot from a forward observer. Mercer asked why. Rourke said because if they know it was me, they will expect me to do it again. And if I fail next time, they will lose faith. Better to let them think it was luck. Luck does not carry expectations. Mercer looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. He never told the platoon who killed the German sniper. He logged it as an unattributed kill from supporting fire. Rourke preferred it that way. He did not want to be known. He wanted to be effective. There is a difference. In the months after Monte Cassino, Rourke's reputation spread quietly through the division, not as a hero, as a specialist, the man you called when the problem was too hard for standard tactics, the man who did not care about glory or recognition, only results. Other snipers started asking him questions. How do you find a hidden shooter? How do you stay still for hours? How do you make a shot in fading light? Rourke answered them all the same way. You stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about the target. You stop worrying about being uncomfortable and start embracing it. You stop hoping for a shot and start earning it. Patience is not waiting. Patience is preparation stretched over time. If you prepare correctly, the shot becomes inevitable. The unearthed scope became legendary in the division. Men who never met Rourke knew about the mail-order optic that killed a German expert at over 300 yards. Some said it was magic. Others said it was just good glass. Rourke said it was neither. It was a tool, same as a hammer or a shovel, and tools are only as good as the man using them. The scope gave him an edge, but the edge was useless without the skill to exploit it. He had spent years building that skill. The scope just made it visible. When the war ended and Rourke went home, he packed the unearthed in the same wooden crate his brother had used to ship it overseas. He wrapped in oilcloth and newspaper and carried it onto the troop ship like it was made of gold. Men offered to buy it from him. He refused every offer. The scope was not for sale. It had saved his life and the lives of men he cared about. You do not sell something like that. You keep it, and you remember what it cost. Back in Montana, Rourke mounted the scope on a hunting rifle and used it to take deer and elk in the mountains he had grown up in. It worked as well in the Bitterroots as it had in the Italian ruins. Glass does not forget. Every time he looked through the scope, he thought about the German sniper on the ridge. He wondered if the man had a scope like this. He wondered if the man had gone home after the war, or if the war had been his home. He wondered if the man's mother ever learned how he died, or she just received a letter saying he was missing. Rourke did not feel guilty. He felt sad, not for killing the man, but for the fact that killing him had been necessary. War makes killers of men who would rather build. That is, its real crime, not the death, the waste. Rourke's children grew up hearing fragments of stories. They knew their father had been in the war. They knew he had been a sniper. They knew he did not like to talk about it. When his son asked him once if he had killed anyone, Rourke said yes. The son asked how many. Rourke said enough. The son asked if it bothered him. Rourke said every day. But he also said some things bother you more if you do not do them. Letting your friends die because you were too scared or too proud to act is worse than the weight of acting. He said you do not get to choose between being clean and being dirty in war. You only get to choose what kind of dirty you can live with. He chose the kind that kept people alive. His son never asked again. The men Rourke saved at Monte Cassino went on to fight in other battles. Some survived the war. Some did not. But the ones who lived past February 14th, 1944, lived because a quiet man from Montana trusted a piece of glass more than he trusted the Army's rules. They went home and had children and built lives that would not have existed if Rourke had obeyed orders. Those children had children. Those children had children. Somewhere in America today, there are people alive because their great-grandfather did not die on a ridge in Italy. They do not know Rourke's name. They do not know he existed. But he is the reason they do. That is legacy, not fame, not recognition. Just ripples in time that stretch forward long after the stone that made them has sunk to the bottom. If this story moved your heart even once, subscribe. It's the least tribute we can give to men like him.